Today is November 12th, 2011. We're at the Weston Volunteer Fire Department interviewing Mr. Nicholson about his military service. Could you please give me your full name as is recorded on your birth certificate, sir?
John Robert Nicholson Jr.
Okay. Do you currently or have you ever had a nickname that you go by?
Bob.
Okay. Is that what you would have been known by in the military?
90% of the time, yes.
Okay. Where were you born and raised, sir?
I was born in Kinslow in Lewis County, and I was raised in Jane Lew, West Virginia.
Okay. Were you born at home?
I don't know, but probably was.
Okay. All right. What did your parents do for a living?
My father worked for the Hope Natural Gas Company
Okay.
for like 30 or 40 years that I know of.
Okay.
But my dad was quiet. He was older than my mother, so my father was born in June of 1880 and passed away in May of 1959.
Okay. All right. Had your father ever been involved in the military?
No, my father never was in the military.
Okay. All right. Did you have any other relatives that possibly were?
Well, not that I know of until I went in the military. And of course, then my oldest son, when he graduated from college, he said some of his good friends got super job offers because they had prior military. So he went up there and talked to recruiting when he went in the Army and spent 18 years in it, and he retired as a major.
Okay. All right. You said you attended school at Jane Lew?
Jane Lew High School.
Okay.
Fighting Redskins.
All right. Is there anything you'd like to describe about your childhood? I mean, growing up and...
I just had a fantastic childhood, a great father, a great mother.
Uh-huh.
2 brothers, 2 sisters in our immediate family. Of course, my father was married before, and his first wife died, and I think he had 6 kids with them. And my mother was married before and had 3 children. So they was all gone by the time we got married. I mean, was raised there.
Uh-huh. I see.
But we just had a fantastic family. We had a little home here in Jane Lew, and had, of course, our own garden, our own pigs, our own cow, our own chickens.
Uh-huh.
Had a big cornfield you had to work and take care of. And
How were those responsibilities divvied up at all?
well, we just knew it had to be done, and we knew Dad would take care of us if we didn't do it, so we just worked together. And
I see.
of course, sometimes I'm sure he had to tell us which direction to go, but
Mm-hmm.
90% of the time it just had to be done, and we done it.
Okay. Have you always remained connected to this area? Did you ever leave and come back, or?
Yeah, and when I graduated from high school in May of '54, I joined the United States Air Force.
Okay.
And left from Jane Lew, went to Sampson Air Force Base in New York for training, for basic training. And then I went to Cheyenne, Wyoming for technical school. And after that, I spent my first year in the military in Korea. The entire year of 1955 was spent in Korea.
Okay. Is anything you'd like to describe about your basic training? I mean, any specific
Well, I was up on the
events?
Finger Lakes in New York. It was just a beautiful, scenic place to be at. And one thing I'll never forget, on maybe the 3rd or 4th week we was there, we had a big graduation party for one of the companies, wherever it was at the time, and Louis Armstrong came out and played music.
Uh-huh.
And I can see him blowing that not saxophone, but wherever he blowed it.
Uh-huh.
He was just fantastic, and
Uh-huh.
a fantastic showman.
Uh-huh.
And everyone loved it, so that's great.
Okay. When you were sent over to Korea, did you know how long you were going to be there?
1 year.
1 year. Okay. Is there anything you'd like to describe about the day-to-day operations over there?
Well, it just was in a advanced warning radars outfit, and also we had a neutral nations inspection team on our base there. Of course, at the time over there, they'd go down south and check out the free world, and then they'd go up north and check out the ones that wasn't free. And then what they did, I don't really know, but they called them neutral nation inspection team.
Uh-huh.
And so we was a little outpost right on the 38th parallel in Korea, coldest place in the world, coldest place I've ever been. But we also was right on the seashore, had a beautiful, I forget the name of the sea, Red Sea, but it was beautiful blue water, just gorgeous. I had a great time, but of course we spent 3 months of the year in the foxhole there defending the base, because they could overrun us easy if they wanted to. But
Was the base there at the 38th?
yeah, just a little outpost, just like I don't like, just a small place, just had about 200 people there, probably that many to max. And then, of course, when we got surrounded by the North Koreans, but they flew in the 9th Army Cavalry, I think it was, like maybe 1,000 of them.
Mm-hmm.
They just swarmed the whole base and taken over all of us. So it was good.
I see. Okay. Is there anything? Did you work with any foreign nationals in Korea?
Well, just the Koreans. We got the local civilians there to work like on the base to do a lot of the chores that need to be done. Like we had some that's trained to work in the warehouses to put up your supplies and do all your manual work and stuff like that. But, other than that, no.
Did they speak English? Some of them, or?
Some of them they learned how to speak English. Yes.
I see. Was you during your time in Korea? Was you provided with any downtime?
No. I think one time I had some kind of stomach virus. They flew me by helicopter over to I forget the place they take me to, but for a couple of days in the hospital. But other than that, never had no trouble with nothing. So it was a great year. Other than being hot, cold, and scared half the time. Being a young kid, get scared kind of easy.
Is there anything you'd like to say about how you guys kept warm? I mean,
well, we slept in a tent with potbelly stoves in the middle of them. And if you're around a potbelly stove running by kerosene, you freeze to death on one side, and the side toward the stove burned up, so you had to keep rotating. So in the night you got in your sleeping bag and you just rolled up in the middle of the night and slept in there until the next morning. You got up and jumped in your clothes and tried to get to work where you'd get warm again. So
how many guys per tent?
I think we had 6 or 8 of us. I think it was about 8, I believe.
All right. Were you provided with any? How were you provided with ways to keep clean and things? I mean,
well, we had another small tent about the same, or maybe a little bit larger, but not a tent, but it was a metal building that had community showers in them, community places where you can go use the bathroom. And of course, it had 55-gallon drums cut half in two, and then you put a board on top of that for you to go use number 2 in the bathroom. A couple of guys got bit by rats from running up and down through and stuff, but other than that, it was great. Just a good out, just like going to the mountains living for a weekend. So.
Okay. Did anyone I know you mentioned just a little bit of health problems, but was there any other health problems that you?
Nah, everything's pretty neat.
Okay. All right. Can you describe what it was like when you were able to return home from Korea?
Yeah, it was just like coming home from a big long vacation, and glad to get back home where you can see real people and talk to them, and you didn't have to worry about someone going to come up behind you and maybe hit you over the head or something. And it's just a great thing to say your tour duty's over with, and of course you start marking them off about 60 or 90 days ago, 58, 57 on down. So that was a great thing.
Okay. Were you provided with ways to communicate back home when you were in Korea?
Well, the only way we communicated was just by airmail, by letters.
I see. Okay. Can you go on to describe, what went on with your military career further?
Well, home from Korea, I was stationed in Eglin Air Force Base at Fort Walton Beach, Florida. I think that was from 56 to 59. Which is a great place to be down in Fort Walton Beach, Panama City, Pensacola, all the way up to the ocean front down through there. While I was stationed there, I got stuck in one hurricane, which we didn't get hit. We went to Alabama to miss, and we got in the middle of it, so other than that, it was fine. But that was just a great stay down there and a great place to be, and I enjoyed it very much.
Okay. One thing I should ask before was, what were some of your job responsibilities? I mean, what was your designated training?
Well, I was a material supply specialist, which kept the records for all the supplies and stuff that we got in that we used to maintain the base with and everything. So everything that came in on the base would come through your supply system, and we'd issue it out to whatever organization may need the supplies that come in.
Okay. Were you in Were you down in Florida for several years?
Well, from 56 to 59.
Okay.
And then from 59 till 63, I believe it was, or 62, I was stationed in Tripoli, Libya, Wheelis Air Force Base. At the time, King Idris was the king of Libya over there.
Uh-huh.
We got to travel around a good bit. It was another beautiful oceanfront property where we got the station on. And, it was unique. Of course, you had to live off. It's hard to get on post over there, so you lived off post in old primitive type homes.
Mm-hmm.
And we lived most of the time out on a place where they grow oranges and tomatoes and stuff. And
Uh-huh.
so we always had fresh fruit and fresh tomatoes. And it's just a great adventure.
What was the society like at that time in Libya?
Well, it seemed pretty free. I mean, the people went and come as they went, as they wanted to get to do.
Uh-huh.
And of course, at the time after I was getting ready to leave her, but Gaddafi was starting to come through, but he didn't do nothing until later on after I left, before he taken over. But when King Idris was there, it just seemed like the oil companies was all booming, and plenty of Americans were working in the oil fields. And we'd go downtown Tripoli and go to dances and stuff, and be 90% American. Well, almost all Americans or Englishmen or Germans or French or whoever happened to be there working at the oil companies.
I guess at that time, there would have been divisions of, I guess they would have been considered rebels at that time, right? Or,
Well, they probably were out there, but at that time, everything was going smooth, so
Uh-huh.
there where we was at, we didn't hear nothing about it, but I'm sure down in the southern and the western part of it, at Benghazi, that's probably, I can't remember how many miles it was, probably 50 or 60 miles down the road, but they used to have a prison there during World War II, and we've been over there, and we had the prison was taken right on the wall in blood, and all that stuff. It was really a unique place to go see, so we've been over there a few times and look around.
All right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to describe about your time in Libya?
Well, just another 3 years of my life. Of course, we've taken 2 children with us over there, and then we had one while we was over there. So we come home with 3. So.
I see. Well, where did you come back to after?
Okay, come back from Libya. I went to Blytheville, Arkansas, which is about 50 or 60 miles north of Memphis, Tennessee.
Uh-huh.
It's right up on the Mississippi River up there, and about probably 150 miles south of St. Louis. And one of the bright things I remember about being stationed in Blytheville was we'd go up there and see baseball games, and I seen Willie Mays hit 3 home runs in one game in one day, back to back. Struck out the first time, the next 3 times up he smacked the home run. So that's one of the
Interesting
highlights that stuck in my mind from being stationed in Arkansas. And Arkansas was a nice place. It's out in the country, about like living here in Weston, from being from Morgantown or Charleston's out in the outlying.
If you don't mind me asking, where did you meet your wife?
The old Jane Lew High School.
Okay.
We've been, I guess you call sweethearts or love affair or hate affair or what. Anyway, it's been a typical marriage for 60 plus years.
And they traveled with you at times? Like
Well, the places they could go, yes. Like Korea, of course, Vietnam, a place like that they couldn't go. But Tripoli, yes, they was with me over there for.
Okay. All right. Well, moving forward from your time in Arkansas.
Okay, then I got stationed at, we could call it Detachment 15 of the 1st Combat Evaluation Group, which is a little town in St. George, Utah.
Let me take a break real
Okay, sure,
quick.
that's fine.
Okay, we were talking about your military service after you left Arkansas, sir.
Okay, then I went to, like I said, to St. George, Utah, which is a little small community on the other southern tip of Utah, which was the, they call it the Southern Mormon Tabernacle for the Mormon religion. They had the main one up in Salt Lake City, but in St. George they had a tabernacle just out of this world. It was beautiful. It was just a little resort town, but I understand now, I want to go back out there one day. It's grown into a major resort area. And But no, it was a great place to be, but it was out in no man. It was just in the middle of nowhere, about 125 miles northeast of Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, Nevada. And our support base for stuff that we needed, we'd go to Nellis Air Force Base down in Las Vegas to get it. So you have to leave real early in the morning, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So we'd go through the desert, then we wouldn't leave Las Vegas to come back to St. George until late in the afternoon, so we wouldn't be in the heat of the day. So it was a good year's tour duty. I stayed there about a year, or maybe a little bit longer, and I got transferred down to the First Combat Evaluation Headquarters at Shreveport, Louisiana, which was the headquarters for it. And that's when we started working to build up units to ship our radar outfits over to Vietnam. And then what we did, and I was the material, I got all the supplies in, but the guys that worked the radar sites, they're the one that would direct the bombers and the fighter planes to where to go drop their payload on they'd pick out spot, just say they picked out Weston and was deploying, say, out of Charleston or somewhere. And the plane could fly, say, to Morgantown, and they'd drop the bomb and hit right here at the state hospital in Weston. We just blow it off the map. I mean, 99.9% of the time, it hit right on the target.
Okay.
And then we'd pick up bridges over in Vietnam or major industrial where they're building stuff, and we just pick them up and blow them up.
Okay. Backtracking a little bit, I thought in Korea, what kind of interaction did you have with the other branches of the military?
Well, we didn't, because we were just a little outpost, which is a radar outfit controlled and run by the Air Force. And then the other people there was, like, say, the neutral nations inspection team. Yeah, I really can't remember, but it seemed like they had Army MPs guarding the neutral nations inspection team, but the rest of the base was all run by Air Force, and the mess halls and the hospitals and the dispensaries and all that stuff was all 100% Air Force.
Okay, all right. A little segueing back into your deployment into Vietnam. I mean, you said that would have happened in '67?
Right, June of '67, I believe it was.
Okay. You want to discuss, I mean?
Well, we went over there as a group from the First Combat Evaluation Group. We set up a new detachment, so we had a commander and a vice commander and a supply man, and everybody needed to set up a organization. We went over to Saigon, the Tonson Air Force Base, and we set it up, and then we had, I guess, probably half a dozen different radar sites set over Vietnam one way, which is right on the 30th parallel in Vietnam, then all the way down the coast and down the southern part of the country. And we had a couple of them over in Thailand, and we had a maintenance man and myself. We go TDY, what the temporary duty assignments. We'd go out and check with our radar people and the supply people at each different site and make sure they had all the stuff that they needed. Routine stuff, like certain things you had to change every so often, so we had to keep the supply of them on hand.
Okay.
I'd do that, and the maintenance man would check with the maintenance people and make sure that all the maintenance is being performed on the radars and everything's up and running all the time, and just to keep everything running smoothly.
Did you work with any foreign nationals in Vietnam?
No. Well, except every time I go get a haircut, I was hoping that guy wouldn't cut your throat, because every time we'd have a raid on the base, they'd always kill one or two barbers, because the barbers, I guess, get information from everybody, so that was a good source of the Viet Cong or whoever they were that was raided the base at nights. It seemed like a barber would always be one of the people they'd find shot somewhere along the road. So that was always a scary thing to get a haircut.
Yes, definitely. Did you work with any other branches of the military while you were in Vietnam?
No, not directly, no. But they're at Saigon, Tonson Air Force Base. They had MACV, which is Army, and then had Marines, and they just had everything there, just like the Pentagon was in Washington, D.C. So all the branches, that's where you have your, I guess, General Westmoreland, there was always people together.
Okay. And what were the living arrangements there for you?
Just living in an old tent, and had sandbags halfway up around them, and there, that's where I got hurt. We had what they called TET Offensive there in February '68, and they were shooting mortars into the base, and I guess they're probably shooting at the airplanes parked out there behind us, but one of them hit our tent, and we had 8 gentlemen in there, and then 4 of us got out, and 4 boys got killed in the direct hit.
Okay.
And I lost half my right lung and ended up being in the hospital for about 6 months after that. I was lucky to get out of it, to be honest with you. Very lucky.
Do you remember how they got you out and everything at all?
Yeah, well, I kind of remember. I mean, when the thing got hit, I just, in my mind, all the movies and stuff we'd been programmed with watching and stuff, what to do in case of alert or attack. And it just flashed my mind that the tent was going to catch on fire. So after we got hit, I could feel blood, or I felt something warm run on my body. So I got up, ran outside, and somebody else out there caught me and laid me down and did something. And of course, I remember throwing me on the ambulance and take me down to the dispensary, and then they take me on downtown to what they call the 3rd Army Field Hospital. And they operate on me down there, and then when I first woke up, as a priest there, I looked up at him, he looked like a giant. And of course, he said his prayers and all stuff for me, and he said, you're like a young man, he says, to get through what you did. And he said, hey, Ted, but they threw your souvenir away, because he said when they used to do that, they didn't expect you to live, but the piece of fragment which they taken out of me, they threw it away, and I didn't get to keep it, but I didn't want it no way. But anyway, I stayed there for about 2 other weeks till they got me strong enough, and then I went to Japan for about 2 months till they got me stronger, and then they brought me back to Wright-Patterson for about 3 or 4 months, and then when I got released from the hospital, my wife still had to change my bandages and stuff. So.
Okay. Did you take? I mean, this attack happened at night.
Well, yeah, about probably 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that's when they use it.
And this was south of the parallel?
Oh, yeah, this was the Tonsanut Air Force Base at Saigon.
I see.
And,
during the TET Offensive?
Right.
Okay, all right. Well, let's further on to the rest of your military service.
Well, then, of course, after I got out of the hospital at Wright-Patterson, they always come out and give you a new set of orders, and they gave me orders to go to some base down in Mississippi, and I told the man, I said, I'm not going to Mississippi. They got mosquitoes down there bigger than jet bombers. Well, I never was stationed there, but I've talked to people all over the place, and I says, can I use your telephone? I want to call my old commander and tell him I don't want to go down there. I want to come back to Louisiana. He said, yeah, you can use them, won't do you no good. I said, well, that's fine. I'd just like to call and talk to him. So I called my old commander down there, Colonel, I can't remember his name, Curtis, I can't remember right now. Anyway, I talked to him on the phone and told him what the circumstances was. And he said, well, of course, he called me by the first name too. He said, Bob, he says, you stay right there and tell that clerk he'll be getting a phone call here in a little bit. So about an hour later, he got a phone call. Changed my orders. I went back down to Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana again, where I used to work. Of course, I was still hurting. I really couldn't work. I mean, so I went down there and worked down there for about another year and a half, I reckon. And we opened up a detachment, Austin, Texas, Buxton Air Force Base. So I went down there as a supply man down there and set up down there as a brand new training site to train the people to go to Vietnam. So that's what I did that for, say, 69 to 72. I was down there, I think it was. And then I left there and went to Air Force Recruiting Headquarters in Washington, D.C. in 72. And then that's when I call it hippie time, where all the guys started wearing their hair long and looked about like me now with half a beard. And of course, at that time, I was a good old military person. I didn't like all that stuff like that. So, I said, well, I get my 20 years in, I'm going to hang it up. So I got my 20 years in, and I just retired. And come home didn't come home to West Virginia. I moved down to Virginia. I had two brothers that lived in a little town called Orange, Virginia. So I stayed there and then lived there for almost 30 years. And I moved back here in 2003 in Weston, where I live now. So that's the story of my life, really.
Why would you say you came back to Weston?
I just want to come home.
Okay.
I want to get out of the rat race of the world and come back here where I could just walk up and down the streets and feel comfortable and all the good old things.
Yes. Throughout your military career, did you visit back to West Virginia?
Oh yeah, we come home every year, every 2 years. It depends where we're at, and the distance and stuff, but we know we come home.
Okay. How long do you think, on average, were you able to stay here when you come home?
Oh, we stay home probably a couple, 3 weeks.
Okay.
And of course, it seemed like every time I get transferred from one spot to another, we'd always detour through, come home on the way to a new location. And of course, when I went to Vietnam, my wife, she lived over in Shady Brook with my kids while I was over there.
Okay. Where did your kids attend school at the most?
Well, it's down at Austin, Texas, at Del Valley High School, grade schools. And then from there, we moved to Orange, and they all went through all the school system in Orange County, Virginia.
Okay, I see.
They was all young, and I think my oldest son my daughter was the oldest. She was a junior when we moved to Orange, but she'd taken so many subjects down in Texas that she went from being a junior to a senior. She had so many credits that she skipped the junior year. And then she got out of school early, and she had a hard time to find a place to get to work with. It wasn't hard if you was under 18 or something like that in most places anymore for a good job. But then my son graduated over there, and he went play football for James Madison University over there.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, no, except I just had with no intention, I was going to go in the military to start with for 4 years and come home and go to school, go to college and get me a degree, and probably like being a football or basketball coach or something like that. But it never happened. I got married and had kids, and then I did come home a couple times to see what the job situation was back in the 60s. Of course, you don't know nothing about that, but there wasn't no work around here. So I just ended up staying in the Air Force, and before I knew it, I had 20 years in. And that's just about the story of it.
Do you have any memories of any experiences throughout your career with any other West Virginians?
Oh, let me see. I've 2 or 3 guys I've stationed with us from West Virginia, but to be honest with you, that's the first thing that leaves your mind. And I remember a guy named Hess, which was a good, super person. I can't think of all the rest of them, but I've had quite a few people that over the years that I've met from West Virginia, different locations and stuff. But as far as become personal and attached to them, I've never done that. No.
Okay. Did you? Would you have done anything differently? Looking back.
Who knows? I have no idea. But when you do something, I was going to go to the military and you get the GI Bill and come home, and then of course, me and my wife was going together when we was in high school. So who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
I could have it, but then we got married and had a kid, and you had to make sure you had enough money to live off of, so you're afraid to take a chance to go to the left or the right. So. And at the time, of course, the military didn't pay good, but now that I'm retired and got good hospital benefits, I got my Medicare and my TRICARE for Life, which gives you 100% medical So you don't have to worry about having money to pay a doctor bill and stuff, so we do have that.
So you've taken advantage of the VA services?
Well,
So,
well, to a certain degree, yeah, I went down to the VA a couple of times, but I just go to a local doctor. And of course, between Medicare and TRICARE, it pays for all the bills. So right now, it's got some good advantages where 1 million people would love to have, but you know, I just happen to fall into it, not intentionally, but unintentionally. It all worked out good for us.
okay. Well, is there any advice you would like to give to people that are currently serving or thinking about joining the military?
Well, I still think it's one of the best things that any young man can do that don't really know what he wants to do, or well, just like a lot of people that can't afford to go to school. If you go in the military, then they got the GI Bills or something like that, where they used to go to education. And then, of course, if they like the military, I mean, the pay in there is fantastic now. What it was when I went in, I got paid $57 or $75 a month. Now they get paid $75 a day, probably. So it's a big difference in the pay. And of course, the big difference when I went in back in the good old days. I mean, you didn't do something right, you might get a really good chewing out with a few good words, or you might get smacked beside the head, but that don't happen very often. But it just the times has changed 300. It's just a total different world today than it was back in. I mean, you have more. So I think you have more because I've watched these kids up here in the Air Force RT at the high school, and them little young kids just really take pride in doing what they're doing. And I think it's fantastic. I think every high school should have a ROTC unit in it. And I think it would be better for the kids if everybody went in the military for 2 years, like I've heard 1 million people say. Because young people, I mean, of course you probably had a good home and everything raised you, but this day and time, half the people don't have a mother and dad. They say, hey, Dad, help me, or hey, Mom, help me. It's either grandma or grandpa or uncle or aunt, but I don't know. I'm not a judge or nothing, so I can't.
Yes. Okay. Well, I especially want to thank you for taking time to do this interview, and I also want to thank you greatly for your service to our country, sir.
Well, I appreciate it very much.
And welcome back. Glenville State College is making sure veterans and their stories are never forgotten. Alex Hine tells us how it's being done.
As part of the West Virginia Veterans Legacy Project, Jason Gumm has been meeting with veterans at the Western Fire Department since Thursday, collecting their stories and hearing their perspective.
The percentage of West Virginians that's been acknowledged is very minute, and we're just trying to pursue that more and to get these individuals' stories before they're lost.
One veteran who came out on Saturday was Bob Nicholson. He served in the United States Air Force for 20 years, including time in Korea and Vietnam. He says he wants to share his story so that his experiences might be able to help someone else.
It would be another good part of history, maybe 2 words that I said and all the 50 words I said that might stick in someone's mind someday, and it will mean something to them. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, or maybe next month, or 10 years from now.
But it's not all about their wartime stories. Gumm wants to hear about any of their early life experiences, especially how they made their way to being a veteran and the challenges they faced in getting there.
We start out asking them about their upbringing, about what led them to join the military, their feelings on their service, the things that they had to endure, the sacrifices that they've made.
For 12 News, I'm Alex Hines.